Welcome to Cody and the Cinema. Today I'm going to be analyzing Leave Her to Heaven, some of the thoughts I had concerning the film. I'm going to be talking about a little bit of what Roger Ebert had to say about it, a little bit of what the film essay that was included had to say about it. This is a great picture, a monumental achievement in Technicolor, and features a once-in-a-lifetime performance from Gene Tierney as Ellen, the main character. I was looking to see if I could find an episode of Siskel and Ebert and, did this film ever show up? And it turns out it did. So in season 9, episode 31, they were discussing a home video of the week. Ebert was, because at that time, critics, movie fans, they're waiting on these movies to come out on VHS. And he was very excited that this had come out. And one of the things he discussed was that 40s women working in Hollywood they were actually allowed at that time to play film fatales, right? Villains. And of course, the most famous of those might be Barbara Stanwyck here in Double Indemnity, which has itself a terrific 4K restoration in the Criterion channel. And he mentioned that by the 50s, a lot of the roles that these women had were a little bit tamer. They had sort of been brought back to being more pure, innocent, or something like that. And his enthusiasm for the film, and you know what, it reminded me of another film that is something he covered in his great movies list. And some of the images early on in the film also reminded me of Red River, a Western directed by Howard Hawks. And I think that this film shares a good many similarities with Leave Her to Heaven. So Red River is a film in which John Wayne's character becomes obsessed to the point of endangering others with moving these cattle over this long distance of land. And it's interesting that one of the quickest associations I made to another movie that wasn't something like Chantal Akerman was this. And I think there are different reasons for that. So Gene Tierney's character very much is a strong alpha kind of personality, much like John Wayne's is in this movie. And you think about that wonderful shot of her spreading her father's ashes in that beautiful land in New Mexico that's so well highlighted by the Technicolor. It feels Western. It feels like a classic John Ford Western. And she has that commanding power over the protagonist. It's not Gene Siskel, it's Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert said in his review on his great movies that Dunsom was a hero and a villain. And that is much like the character that we get with Gene Tierney in Leave Her to Heaven. The booklet, which has a terrific essay, really covers the cover of this disc and why we have this sunglasses appearance going, like why is she wearing sunglasses? And so I wanted to share with you a few lines from the essay that really illuminated more of the meaning of the film for me as I watched it a second time. It says, with a Medusa-like power. So he's talking about her eyes. With a Medusa-like power, Gene Tierney, her eyes, they dominate the screen, shifting between seafoam cool and oceanic intensity. And in the most famous scene, they're obscured behind dark sunglasses as Tierney's character commits one of the wickedest acts in movie history. But even when they're hidden from us, we still feel them. And if you go back and you watch the scene where she watches, the child drown, and the patience of her acting in that scene, and the different emotions you can see going on in her mind, even behind, sunglasses. That is one of the most terrific moments in movie history, just like it says in terms of like someone doing something evil. And I think when you read the essay, you'll see more great analysis like this. The essay also deals with her pregnancy and how she begins to feel a little bit trapped in her life. And I think this is one of the most interesting parts of the film and what elevates it a little bit for me beyond some of the others in the era. And there were a lot of other movies in that era that were great, like Mildred Pierce, Joan Crawford here, who beat her out at Best Actress, and they both did a great job. Or you think about Bette Davis and now Voyager. Classic Hollywood in the 40s had these great performances, and of course, this. But this part of the movie where she's starting to wear clothing that's much less attractive, almost the way the costume were chosen when she's pregnant, it's almost like overdone, so that she's no longer that beautiful woman on the train. She's the villainess, the monster lurking in the attic almost when she's upstairs. And as her husband is out with her sort of sister, you can see that romance budding, but she is stuck at home totally alone. And everything that happens, of course, with the pregnancy, with her going down the stairs, you almost wonder if there's not a complex message here being told about women's rights, feminism, and the power of independence. For whatever reason, another Western has continued to sort of hang in the back of my mind as I think about that theme of independence. Winchester, 47, the James Stewart movie where he has to learn, or others around him have to learn how to use a gun properly, how to use it responsibly, how the gun is the constant center of attention, the violence that's always waiting to pop off in that movie. It just, something about those two ideas really has stuck with me. And I love that there's not a simple answer as to how she should have felt. I think that's good, rich thematic filmmaking there. On one hand, it does seem awful, all of what she's done. I mean, she killed Danny, or let him die. It's almost worse that way. But on the other hand, what has driven her to be so possessive? What went on with her father that we never knew about, right? Why, was he responsible for any of this? He was the parent after all. And moreover, what is this saying about women when they are pregnant and they actually can't do much and they lose that independence, right? Like the John Wayne character had here, that's why I brought this up. Like, he had infinite independence, and he seems to suffer very little consequence, especially at the end of this picture, for practicing independence through violence. On the other hand, when Jean Tierney practices her own version of violence twice, it's extremely condemned in its own way, but you kind of wonder, why is she like that? I'm brought back to this now Voyager concept with Bette Davis. Like, what is it about oppression and people being stuck in situations where they have no autonomy that causes them to react in such ways? Is it, and in this case, is it because she's like just genuinely a terrible person and crazy? Well, yes, to a point, but also her struggles during the pregnancy, I think, highlight larger societal issues that are still being talked about today, and certainly still being talked about today. And we sympathize with her to a point. When it comes right down to the science of pregnancy, pregnancy is dangerous. Pregnancy can be deadly. And the film highlights all of that and doesn't sugarcoat that part of the marriage and that part of the family. And I like that, right? Because so much of the film, she's running away from family, and she only wants like one person, right? I think that those are really great parts of this movie that are years and years ahead. Right? And so I'd be interested, if any of you have read the novel, if the novel explores any of that territory or not. I'm looking for a thrift copy of it as we speak. One last point about this film that I wanted to make. Vincent Price, almost, when Jean Tierney's off the screen, you have a little bit of that trial in what happens in the courtroom, and you need someone who has the same intensity of Tierney, because it's not Cornell Wilde, right? It's not Dick's character, Dick Harlan. It's got to be Vincent Price. It's got to be someone with that commanding presence. I told my wife as we were watching this is the same voice that gave us that godlike, voiceover in Michael Jackson's Thriller. And I think he's perfectly cast for this. As he's going through the courtroom scenes and he's sort of revealing truths and enlightening us as to what really happened, I'm thinking that he is a godlike presence. He is some kind of mythological entity who's pulling the truth of hell out onto the courtroom so that no one can conceal it anymore. He's like a Tiresias from the Odyssey in that way, warning Odysseus, or in this case, the courtroom. And I love his inclusion, and I think it's my favorite thing I've ever seen him do. One last thought here. This is a great time to bring up Jeanne Diamond and Chantal Akerman. If you have seen either Jeanne Diamond or Leave Her to Heaven, you should see the other. They're great companion pieces. And since I haven't said that I'm analyzing this film, I won't talk too much about the plot, but the idea that independence can be a terrifying power if you don't use it properly. And what motivates people to commit acts of evil? How much is it selfishness? How much is it oppression? I love the film. I love Technicolor. The beauty and the splendor and the terror of Leave Her to Heaven makes it one of the all-time best 40s movies, and probably now for me a top 100. Those were my main thoughts as I watched and read some more and studied some more and had time to sit down with the film. What are some thoughts you have about Leave Her to Heaven that you could leave in the comments below? I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this analysis, go ahead and click that like button for me. I do appreciate it. It does grow the channel. And we will see you next time on Cody and the Cinema.